Live, we have 4 simple rules. Number 1, we don't discuss politics, ever. Number 2, this is not a religious channel, and while you might hear people say, God bless you, or I'm going to pray for you, or I wouldn't have gotten through this without my faith, that's fine. What's not fine is to say, my God is better than your God, or here's why you're not getting into heaven. It's not going to fly. Number 3, we believe wholeheartedly if you can't control your tongue, then you can't control your life. So while on board, there's not going to be any cursing in the live chat, period. And number 4, there is no room for mean people on the lifeboat. Because we discuss very sensitive things from people's past in our group setting, we got to protect those people. The only way they feel confident and comfortable discussing those things is in an environment that is free of trolls and mean people. So if you're a mean person or you're a troll, we're going to block you for life. And if your account happens to be less than 24 hours old, we're probably a little suspicious right from the word go. Why? Well, because there are people in this world who enjoy being cruel solely for the sake of being cruel. It's not going to fly here. But if you're here because you're trying to get sober and live your best life, then you might find that the lifeboat is just that, a lifeboat. I'm Captain Tommy Scoville, and we will see you on deck.
Hey, good evening, everybody. I'm Captain Tommy Scoville, and on the other side of the glass, my partner, Mark Wages, and welcome to the lifeboat. Before we get rolling today, I got some things that I wanted to cover. First and foremost, man, to everybody that took the time to say a prayer for our brother Charlie Mullins. And now that I'm feeling a lot more comfortable about it, we'll just call him Charlie Murphy again. But Charlie is, he was going in for a procedure today. Don't need all of the details of this because, it's personal stuff. But what it boils down to is there were a lot of things that this could have been that would have been really, really frightening, and they're not any of those. And we still want to keep Charlie in our prayers because it is something that's, going to require some attention, but it is so much better a scenario than any of the ones that it could have been. And I just want to thank everybody and the number of people who reached out to me. I'm telling you, Charlie, it would just really make you feel loved if you knew the number of people that reached out through emails to just say they were concerned and they were praying and that you're a great guy. And, we're all in agreement. And tell you, my brother was shook up. He really was. And it was, I know that Johnny feels infinitely better after you went to the doctor, which is a good thing. It really is. It's a good thing for everyone involved. Absolutely.
Yeah, guys. You hear a lot of people say what Tommy just said, right? But what's different is this is actually the truth here. you know what I mean? It truly is a family. It truly, honestly is, and people actually truly care. And I'm not saying you don't get that anywhere on the internet. You find it like on my channel, Johnny's channel, and other people's channel like that. Yeah. But we are in the minority when it comes to that. So, and I think Tommy probably feels the same way with me. It really does make it a little bit more special for us.
There's no question.
It really
There's
does.
no question.
So thank you guys for being those people.
Yeah, it really, I had a conversation with someone once that said, I almost feel bad that because, you read people who say stuff online about, this is almost a family for me. And the person said, it kind of breaks my heart that, they don't have a family out there that they're going to claim. And I said, no, I think you're reading this the wrong way. I really do. It's everybody has a family. You're born with one. What do you mean that they don't have a family? The thing is that what we've said from day one is that, you're not stuck with a family. If you want to build your own, you absolutely can do that. And I don't know. I think it's a beautiful thing. I really do. Yep. So, Charlie, we're really happy, man. We're happy you're here. We're happy that the news was good, and we're relieved. We really are. So, I don't know. Made my day, and I'm glad I heard early in the morning. Miss V says she's doing better today than yesterday, and we love that too because V is an absolute pillar of the boat here. There's just no two questions about it. So, we're glad you're feeling better, Miss V.
Yep.
Today, people, we're going to talk about. You saw the thumbnail. And we are killing our kids in this country. There's no question. Today in the news, you probably saw this because this is national news, but there was a principal that caught a student with fentanyl, which is Nothing really unusual in this day and age, unfortunately. What really made this story a little different is that the student was 13. And so you start to wonder, I say this so often, I feel like some of the talk show hosts who just pick one, particular thing and beat it to death. But it is the number one cause of death between the ages of 18 and 48 in this country, which means that your child is far more likely to die of a fentanyl overdose than, say, a car wreck or anything else. It is the number one cause of death. Brandon Teller says, hit that like button, family. Please do. It does help the big red button push us out further. And that's the goal. We want to reach as many people as possible. Thank you, Brandon, as always. So the question becomes, how do you raise a drug-free kid? How do you educate your child so that you don't end up one of those statistics? And this is really, this means a lot to me. It really does. Because this was sort of the birth of all of this for me. Prior to the lifeboat becoming the lifeboat, what I wanted to do more than anything was talk just about how to raise a drug-free kid. And it hit really close to home for me for a lot of reasons. Jimmy Pickles, always great to see Jimmy. And 44 days sober for Brandon Galloway. Well done, Brandon. I love it. Good stuff. Ladybug, keep your eyes on the road. This is a huge thing for me because I was raised by great parents. My mother and father were just phenomenal parents. I don't have a complaint, but so oftentimes society blames the parents for anything that happens. If a child's on drugs, well, if their parents raised them right, if you don't know what to look for, and if you have no idea the world that your child lives in, then it is very difficult to raise a drug-free child. This is something that you have to be viciously involved in if you have any hopes whatsoever of your child not ending up experimenting with drugs, and in this day and age, very likely experimenting with drugs that can kill he or she. So where does this start to get off the rails? I've talked about this before, and if you're new to the lifeboat, hey, good to see you, Noise Opera. If you're talking about, you've probably heard this on the lifeboat, but if you're new, you may not have. But where we get off the rails is always because we want so badly for our kids to not do drugs that instead of educating them about what to do in order to not end up in dangerous situations with drugs, we feel the need to make it worse than it is. And in order in the process of doing that, we lie to them. Plain and simple, we lie to them. We tell them things about the drugs that aren't true. And we don't think enough in the back of our head to realize that our kids are living in this world that we're lying to them about. And they're going to see the truth. And when they do, they're going to say, you know what? They lied to us about that. I'm going to give you a perfect example, and then we'll sort of start at the beginning, but I want you to understand where I'm coming from. Right now, fentanyl is the number one cause of death. We all agree, right? Or overdoses, and the vast majority of that would be fentanyl. So what happens very often is we tell our kids about fentanyl, right? Because we're terrified. And we say, just handling this can kill you. You understand that just touching this can kill you. Well, that's not the truth. Now, the truth is that if handling carfentanil can absolutely kill you, just touching it. Carfentanil can get through the skin, it'll leach into the bloodstream, and touching it or getting even in the same room and breathing it in sometimes is enough to cause respiratory failure. However, that's not the drug that is being sold on the street. What is being sold on the street is a variation of a drug called alpha fentanyl. Carfentanil is for knocking down elephants. Now, I'm not going to tell you, and I'm not being facetious, it literally is for knocking out elephants. Now, does carfentanil occasionally end up on the street? Yeah, from time to time it does. But one in 100,000, of these doses, if not way less than that, because there's no vested interest in a drug dealer taking a drug that you're only going to sell to somebody once. Every single person you sell carfentanil to is going to die. Plain and simple. I had an epic tolerance. In my entire life on the street, I never once overdosed. Right? I had a very, very serious tolerance to opiates. I couldn't do carfentanil. If I touched it, it would kill me. You understand? It is a very, very dangerous drug, and you can't cut it into another. The process of cutting is mixing in an inert substance that doesn't get you high into a substance that does get you high to double or triple or quadruple the yield. The problem with that is a grain of salt size chunk of carfentanil could not be broken up into a kilo, which is about what you would have to do. It's not possible. You understand the principle behind this. It is granulated. You're not going to be able to pulverize this and then spread it out among 2.2 pounds of cut. So this is not a drug that ends up on the street. But we say to our kids, just touching fentanyl can kill you. Then the kid ends up at a party and someone says, do you want to get high? No, man, I'm not doing that stuff. You know what I mean? Just touching fentanyl can kill you. And they watch a guy go into their pocket and take out 100 pills and put it in the palm of their hand, and they start handing them out to people. And everybody at the party is touching fentanyl. You know, some people are eating it, some people are grabbing it, putting it in their pocket, but every person in the room just made contact with this stuff. And they look around. No one's dying. No one's dropping dead. There's no respiratory depressing going on. And they go, stuff doesn't kill you. You can touch this stuff.
They
Well,
get
what was the
confused.
next thing we told them?
Yeah.
Yeah, the next thing we told them is, if you swallow this, you're going to overdose and die. Well, if the first thing we told them is BS, why would they possibly believe that the second thing we told them wasn't? You're just as bad off, if not worse, giving misinformation than not giving any information at all. So we need to start being honest with our kids from the word go, and it trickles down. Fentanyl, we're all terrified of, right? But they used to tell our kids in school in the DARE program, right? There was a program called DARE, and it was nationwide. It's been drummed out of 99% of all schools. The government pulled their funding for exactly what I'm talking about. They lied to kids, and they did it in such a way that they could get away with it. They would say marijuana can cause in men gynecomastia, which is the development of breast tissue that would mimic that of a woman. But they said it as if, 3 or 4 out of every 10 people that smoke this are going to develop breasts. They didn't say this is a 1 in 12 million chance that you could be the person that is going to get gynecomastia, because smoking pot at a very young age is going to cut down on the production of testosterone, and it's going to allow estrogen. And in some kids who, by the way, already have something in their body that is leaning them in that direction, the smoking of weed is going to cause gynecomastia. But they told all the kids this. And they looked around and went, Eric smokes a 1/4 ounce a day. I noticed he doesn't wear a bra. They're lying to us. Well, and then what's the next thing we tell them? Well, these opiates can kill you. Well, if you lied to them on the weed, why would they believe what you said about the opiates? So my thing is this, people. Put a little faith in your kids. Honestly, put some faith in your kids that you can raise a drug-free kid by telling them the truth. So that when your kid says, is pot going to kill me? No. You could sit in a room and smoke 400 pounds of it. It's never going to kill you. It's not a drug that kills people. It'll kill your ambition, right? Now you start saying things like the people that smoke this stuff on a really regular basis. I told this story before. We went and did some test runs where we talked to kids. And I said, raise your hand if you've got an uncle that lives in grandma's house, stays in the basement and plays video games all day long. And 40 hands went up in the room and people started laughing. Well, that's the danger. And I'm not lying to the kids, right? I sat and said, I'll answer any question you want. I'm not here to tell you, that any of this stuff is going to kill you. Unless, of course, this stuff will kill you, right? And the questions were incredible. Kids wanted to know why methamphetamines is going to rot the teeth out of your head. Like, they understood already that meth mouth was a thing. They've seen it. It's in the world. So instead of saying, meth is going to kill you, the first time you do this stuff, it can kill you. Well, I know we want to make this so bad that our kids are terrified to do the drug, but there's so much danger in this, people. So go back to my youth. Now, like I said, I had great parents, but when I was in school, and I've told this many times on the boat before, I was shown the film Reefer Madness. This is a cult classic, right? It was a propaganda film about marijuana and how, reefer, which was what you used to call a joint back in the day, smoking this stuff would literally drive you insane. And they show this guy smoking and he's going nuts playing at a piano. And He ends up jumping out of a window, and there's another scene where a guy shoots somebody, and the guy would come home from work just raging angry. Jane, get my reefers. And he's got this like possessed look on his face. And I remember seeing this, and when they first showed it, we were like, damn, like this stuff's terrifying. And within a couple of weeks, there were people I knew who were smoking this stuff all the time. And I'm like, doesn't seem to be making him crazy. He seems to be having a pretty good time on it. And well, the next thing they showed us was a film called The Cocaine Fiend. Well, we didn't believe about cocaine either. So this stuff can kill you, right? 2 grams of this is going to kill you. Sure it is. And weed's going to make you insane. And then a guy that was a professional basketball player, or he was a college basketball player who was about to become a professional basketball player, a guy by the name of Len Bias, signed a contract with the Boston Celtics. And his signing bonus alone was millions of dollars. And that signing bonus, a decent amount of it went to buying cocaine. And he went out and partied with some friends the day he signed his contract, and he blew up his heart. This killed him, took him off the planet. And all of a sudden, we knew cocaine could kill you. And I'm not going to tell you that we stopped doing drugs, because we didn't. But I sure did that drug a whole lot different than I had done it 2 weeks earlier. It wasn't something now where as long as it's free, I was going to snort as much of it as I could possibly get because it isn't going to kill you. I came to believe that this drug could take you off the planet. And there was a different level of respect for that drug. Now, again, I was a jughead. But if you educate your kids and you tell them the truth, it doesn't mean that necessarily they're never going to do any drugs. But if your child said, well, here's a list of drugs I'm never going to do, because I do believe it can kill me. And your kid ended up experimenting with marijuana, and it was the only drug he ever did, or she ever did. I promise you, people, you won the lottery. Now, if they start getting out of control on it, you have that conversation. But if you look at my story and the story of my first wife, the one who is the mother of my children, she was an alcoholic and a heroin addict. And I obviously was a drug addict and a criminal. Our kids are not drug addicts. And the reason was you can't slide one by us. You know what I mean? Like the first time my son came home, and it was an after school thing. And he said, I said to him, hey, Spanks, so how was school? He said, it was good. I said, what did you do today? And he went, do today. That sounds funny. Do today. What did you do today? I was like, hey, come here. Right? Because instantly I knew that that's usually not a conversation you're going to have with a kid who's sober, right? The what did you do today is not particularly hysterical unless you've just smoked some weed. And a dialogue started. One of the things that also happens is very oftentimes the way we react when our kids do things the first time encourages them to never tell us the truth ever again. And there is real danger in your kid lying to you about what's going on with his friends and his school and everything else. But that is real. That's, if you say to your child, do you have any friends that are smoking pot? Do you have any friends who are getting high? Yeah, I do. Okay, that's all right. Who's smoking? Mark. If you ever go out and hang out with Mark again and you lose your mind, right? What you're saying to your kid is, I can't handle the truth. So don't tell me. Don't tell me the truth. If you went the other route and just went, damn, really? Wow. I don't know. I had a lot more faith in Mark. It's not a great thing for him to be doing at this age. It's kind of a bummer. What's your plan? You spend a lot of time with him. Are you planning on getting high with him? Seriously, talk to me. Open dialogue between parents and kids does amazing things.
It's so
right.
important.
Really,
It really is.
It is. It is absolutely huge. Now, I'll tell you something else. Like with my kids, there's a Bill of Rights as far as I'm concerned, right? Every kid has a Bill of Rights, and every parent has a Bill of Rights. When my kids were growing up, I'm not searching your room. I'm not going through your phone. I'm not scanning your emails. I believe wholeheartedly that a kid needs a level of privacy, right? Until you don't. So in the Bill of Rights, I'm not intrusive. I'm not looking over your shoulder. I'm not doing all that stuff. But when my kid says, do today, that sounds so funny. Give me your phone. Right?
Yeah.
Because he just blew his Bill of Rights. You understand what I'm saying? Those days are over. And then If you have a child that's doing drugs, you have to take extreme measures to ensure that it doesn't continue. And what are extreme measures? Well, I don't know. Take the door off the bathroom. Think I'm kidding? Take the door off the bedroom. Now, it doesn't have to stay that way forever, but if I think that there's a chance in hell you're going into the bathroom to get high, there's not going to be a bathroom door. Now, if that sounds, barbaric to you, wait until you get a phone call that says, do you have a son named so-and-so?
Right.
We need you to come down and identify him. Right? This is the reality. Take the damn door off the hinges, because we're not talking about a world now where, they're doing a little dope. It's an experimental thing. Nah. I mean, that was 35, 40 years ago. Now, so many kids die in the first, second, or third attempt at experimenting with drugs. And you have to understand the world they live in. When you buy that first pill of fentanyl, you're not buying it from a guy who just got his first pill of fentanyl. More often than not, you're buying it from somebody that's been abusing drugs for a hot minute, and they see the guy take 4 pills, right? Well, that's their frame of reference. If you say to your child, let me explain to you how tolerances work on drugs, the first time you do it is the best chance on the planet that you're going to die. There is no tolerance whatsoever in your system. This is the time that you are on death's doorstep experimenting with this crap. Now, does it mean your kid is going to listen to everything you say and maybe not ever do drugs? Well, that would be awesome. It really would. But if they make a dumb decision and go, I'm cutting this thing into 4 pieces, I'm just not going to do a whole, I don't know enough about this, so there's no chance I'm eating a whole one. I don't care if you just ate 6. I don't know how long you've been doing dope. If your kid has a handle on how all of this works, then the odds that they grow to adulthood increase exponentially. Take a handgun, right? Take a handgun and put it on a table, and then get 7 kids in a room and say, if you touch this, it's going to go off and kill you. All you got to do is touch it, and this gun is going to go off and kill you. You walk out of the room, it'll take about 2.5 hours, maybe 3, before some kid touches that gun. They may not pick it up, but they're going to go over and they're going to put their hand on it. They're going to touch the thing. And when nothing happens, then they're going to pick it up. And they're going to start waving it around. They're going to start pointing it at people. I grew up with guns. I grew in a very, very rural place. We had over 100 acres of land, right? You couldn't even see a neighbor unless it was the right time of year when there was no leaves on the trees. You might be able to spot another house. But we really lived in the sticks. And there were pistols, there were shotguns, there were rifles. And I remember asking my family, I said, I want a BB gun. I thought that would be a really cool thing. They said, no, we're not doing that. Because people point those at each other and they shoot. They bought me a Winchester 30-30. Right? And at first glance, you go, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Right? You can't trust me with a BB gun, but you're going to give me a gun that could kill somebody. Well, in order to be able to touch this gun, I had to go through a safety course. And every single person I knew in the state went through that safety course. And the first day that we went there, a guy took out a gun, it was a shotgun. And he said, here, check this out. See this? This is the safety. And he put the safety on the gun and went, boom, and shot it. Said, this safety doesn't work. So don't trust a safety by pulling the trigger. If you do, make sure there's no one around. The first time you test it, you're out in the woods, you're pointing it at a target and see if it'll go off with the safety on. Then he took another gun and he just tapped it on the ground and the gun went off. And he showed us every single way that one of these things could screw up. And you know what I got? I got a very serious respect for firearms. I had a real handle on just how damn dangerous these things are. And with all of the stupid things I did in my life, no one ever got close to getting hurt with a gun because I knew a crap load about them. I knew what the magazine was. I knew how you loaded it. I knew every single part of it. If you had put me in that room and said, if you touch that thing, it's going to kill you, I'd say, no, it's not. However, point that at someone and pull the trigger, it's going to kill them. And let me show you how to make sure it's not loaded. Do you understand what I'm saying, people?
Yep.
One of the other things that is absolutely paramount, you talk to your kids about sex, I assume, right? Nobody wants to become a grandparent, when your kid is 14 or 15. So usually you're not going to trust the school to do that. You're going to have a conversation with your kid about sex. And most parents that I know preach abstinence. Look, whatever you do, don't do this. Honestly, hang out, wait till you're married. It may sound archaic. It may sound, just old time crazy. But later in life, you're gonna be really happy that the only person you're with, and your kids are probably laughing at you. But you also say, if you screw up, you need to make sure that you're using a condom, right? We preach abstinence, but we make sure that they understand what birth control is. However, with drugs, we don't do that, do we? We just preach abstinence. Whatever you do, don't do it. Whatever you do, don't do it. This is the most complex and dangerous issue in the entire world facing our kids. And usually we give it 3 syllables. Just say no. 3 syllables. No, we're talking about hours and hours and hours of sitting down with your kid. They need to know what weed is. They need to know what acid is. They need to know what mushrooms are. They need to know what benzos are. All of this stuff. So that when they are turned loose in the world and someone says, hey, I got one of these. Nah, I know everything about that. PCP? No, I'm good. Dad showed me a few videos of people on PCP. Spice? No, seen videos on that. Seriously. Well, I watched that frightening video on where a guy tried to chew a man's face off on bath salts. I think I'll pass. In fact, if y'all are getting ready to smoke some bath salts, I think I'll just leave.
Yeah.
You understand the difference between just say no and drug education? Because we're killing our kids by not educating them. And when I was getting ready prior to the lifeboat, when this is what we were talking about doing, right? It was going to be called the ounce prevention. And the only thing we were going to do is talk to parents about this. And as we started to do a little research, we would say to parents, do you talk to your kids about drugs? Yeah, of course. Well, what's your procedure? Well, we tell them not to do it. Well played. That's it. That's what you're going with.
Yeah.
Don't do it. That's like saying to a kid, okay, make sure you use turn signals and throwing them the keys to a car. You wouldn't do that, right? You're going to put them through a course where they go in and get with a learner's permit and they sit with someone who just teaches them everything they need to know about driving. And once they do, what do? You get in the car and then do the exact same damn thing that they did. You teach them how to drive. You talk to them about all of that stuff. You know how much more likely they are to die from drugs than they are from that car? For real. But the average parent is going to spend more time teaching their kid to throw a ball, right?
Yes.
Or put a worm on a hook to go fishing than they are to educate them on the most dangerous issue on the planet facing them. And I'm not making that up. I'm not saying that for effect. There's nothing more dangerous, right? This is the most likely way you're going to lose your child. I'm not trying to over dramatize this. That's a fact.
Yes, it is.
So, yeah, I mean,
here's a little graphic here, Tommy. And you might not be able to read it. It might be too small for you to read, but I can read it to them if you want me to. It's guys, you can read that yourself. It really truly is something good to look at because this is just something you guys can pull this up yourself. 13 is the average age somebody first starts experimenting with drugs. Think about that.
Yeah.
Just think about that for a second. How many of us have teenagers in the house right now? And how old are they? Okay. And I would really, truly, sit down and think and be like, well, I got teenagers, but guess what? I got an 8-year-old too. Who's that 8-year-old learning from?
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly
that's
something that doesn't really get talked about a whole lot, is it, Tommy? It's the peer pressure thing, and it's the learning from your bigger siblings.
Absolutely.
So if the first one's jacked up, okay, it does tend to trickle down a little bit. I mean,
absolutely it does. There's a great story that sort of hammers this home. I was working as a public speaker, and as I said before, a decade before I got sober, this is what I wanted to do. I just couldn't get clean. And I was on an airplane. I've told the story on the show before. And I'm typing away on a laptop, writing out stuff that I wanted to say. And this person next to me is just, reading. And at the time, I had so many frequent flyer miles from public speaking that I used to do first class, so I didn't have to do this. I didn't want somebody reading my stuff. And so I turned the computer a little bit, and she did this one. Right? So finally, I just turned it and said, there you go. You want to read that? And she said, well, I don't know. It just seems kind of obvious to me. Because the heading said, what to look for to know if your kid's on drugs. And she said, I said, It's pretty obvious, is it? She said, yeah, you look for red eyes, if you can smell stuff on them, right? You always make sure that when they come in, you give them sort of a sniff test on the breath and this and that. And I said, no, no, I'm referring to looking for small pieces of rubber on the ground that come off of balloons from kids doing heroin. And I went through about 5 other things. I said, or light bulbs disappearing in your
Burnt
house.
foil.
Yeah, burnt foil. Correct. Your tin foil disappearing. And I said to her, take your tin foil, roll it out 3 feet, measure it, and put a black mark with a Sharpie, and then carefully roll it back up. And if your tin foil is disappearing, your kids are on drugs, and then probably not on good ones. And when I got to the light bulbs in your house disappearing, I thought, oh, crap, because she got a look on her face. And I didn't really want to be doing this one-on-one in first class. I just wanted to work on my stuff. And she said to me, why? What would light bulbs be? And I said, well, first of all, it could be a bad lamp. Don't get panicky, right? And she's like, no, we're going through 6 or 7 bulbs a month.
Oh,
And I said,
wow.
well, kids have a tough time going into a head shop, a place to buy paraphernalia. So very oftentimes they'll smoke meth, right, out of a light bulb because the glass is thin enough. So they insert a straw unless they have a way to poke a hole in the glass, which you do with a torch. But they'll put a straw in there and they light it. And as the stuff gases, they breathe it in. And she said, well, I don't think my kids would do that. I said, they might not. I said, and besides, there would be other things that would be dead giveaways. And she said, like what? I said, well, burning that creates a ton of carbon, right? The bulb turns black and that carbon will end up on everything. I said, and very often on the cuffs of your pants, because that's where kids will wipe their hands on it because they're not going to do it up here. And she said, it's everywhere. She said that black crap is everywhere. And her son told her it was from working and doing models because he was making models. But we talked for about the next 2 hours. This woman lived in New York and she lived in a very nice part of New York. She obviously had some cash. She was divorced, but she had 2 kids. And as Mark was saying, one was 17 and the other was 12. And she said to me, I said, are they close? She said, well, they live in the same room. I said, and the younger sibling has never said to you, so-and-so doesn't go to sleep? He's up for days on end. And she said, no. I said, then he's getting his little brother high. Right? Because that's the only reason that he wouldn't say, why does my older brother never sleep? And as it turns out, she said, what do? I said, you drug test them. You give them a pee test and you watch them pee. You don't leave the room. You don't do any of that. Uncomfortable, you change the diapers, you're going to have to do it again. Right? You watch them pee and they failed. She called 2 days after I was just got off stage and I get a phone call and this woman says, I spoke to you on an airplane. And I said, take this the wrong way, but I speak to a ton of people on airplanes. I give you my card. And she said, no, I have the kids that were on meth. And she said, they failed. Both of them failed. They also failed for benzos. I said, which checks out because they're probably using that to go to sleep. So she said, what's the next step? I said, search the house. She said, I already did. She said, I searched it up and down. I said, did you look under the mattresses? She said, yeah. I said, did you go on the inside pockets of every single thing hanging in the closet? Did you look in the toes of all the shoes? Well, in his best Sunday, sports blazer on the inside pocket, she found a bag. And she called me and she said, it kind of looks like salt or rock salt. I said, yeah, that's meth. And I said, how much is in the bag? She goes, well, I don't know how to answer that. I said, use your fingers for the width and tell me how much of it is in the bag. And she said, probably 2 or 3 fingers worth. And I said, is there a stamp on the bag? Like a cherry bomb or anything like that? I said, because dealers often try to identify their product by putting, and she said, no, it's just a regular sandwich bag. I said, sandwich bag, right? 3 fingers in a sandwich bag in New York, right? Where this stuff at the time was, $3,000, $4,000 a pound. I said, your kid's selling it.
Yep.
I mean, is his allowance $500 a month? And she said, no. I said, your kid's selling this. Doesn't necessarily mean he's a drug dealer, but he's organizing a bunch of other people to give their money. And she said, what do? I said, you send them to rehab. And she said, well, what about school? I said, well, you could have a kid that gets A's and B's, graduates with his class.
And dies first year of college.
I wouldn't risk that. Yep. And the woman sent me one of the most beautiful letters ever after the fact. I was actually incarcerated when the letter arrived. But yeah, she pulled her kid, both of them out of school, put them in rehab. Her husband, who was divorced, would come over to the house so that they could talk to the kids together. And I sort of walked her through this process. But Mark is 100% right. If if you're a kid and you're 17 and your younger brother goes, "Hey, what are you doing?" You go, "Hey, come here, try this." It's the safe bet.
Yeah.
It's the safe bet. Sad but true.
I'm gonna say
Kylie Moore says, "This is so crazy. I was just talking to my baby cousin about all this. She's 13 and 15 and tried to get them to understand addiction is in our family and they're so more likely to become addicts." That's huge.
Yep.
That's the kind of honesty I'm talking about. We want to bury any information like that from kids. Whatever you do, don't let them know Uncle Tommy's been to prison or he's had a drug problem. No, I'm telling everybody in my family. For real.
Yeah.
It becomes real. You understand?
Yeah.
When you say to a kid, drugs really do enslave people, they go, "Yeah, sure." Hey, your Uncle Tommy? He robbed banks. He went to prison for robbing banks to get heroin.
100, man.
It gets real,
Yeah.
real quick. But we, for so long, have tried to keep all of this stuff in the closet. And why? Because society says it makes you a bad parent, right? So parents instantly hang their head and go, first question every time, where did we go wrong? Where did we go wrong?
Kept their mouth shut.
Might not have gone wrong at all, other than the fact that you didn't know anything about it. My father, God bless him, one of the best men I've ever met in my life. But when you see heroin, it comes in a small piece of plastic cut into a perfect square. Inside that piece of plastic, they wrap up 1/10 of a gram of heroin and they put that inside of a balloon. They tie the balloon as tight as they can and they cut it off, right? So that they can keep them in their mouth. And if a cop comes, they swallow them because they're in a balloon. They'll just go through them. They don't have to worry about overdosing or whatever. But no matter how much you try to be careful, little pieces of those balloons end up everywhere. And those little pieces of plastic, and there were some in my pocket that ended up from a washing machine. And I remember my dad walking in with 3 of them in his hand. And I thought, oh my God, I'm busted. And my father said, "I don't know what candies these come off. If I find another one, I'm going to kill you." These things are everywhere, man. Just throw the stuff in the trash. If my dad knew what to look for, we might not be having this conversation. For real. Maybe I'd be running for office.
Yep.
It didn't make him a bad dad. It just made him somebody that, no, he just didn't know. And here's the thing. There was a time where that flew. For real. Where did you find information in the 80s? Where did you go in this day and age? There isn't any excuse, people. How much time do you spend as parents, right, researching stupid stuff on Facebook to see what car your friends just bought? Spend that much time researching drugs that you want to talk to your kids about, and you're likely to raise a drug-free kid. And in this day and age, raising a drug-free kid means you got a damn good chance of going to their college graduation, right, and having a grandkid. Because if you don't do this, you're literally playing Russian roulette with your kid's life.
Sure.
And I'm not trying to over dramatize this. Don't take my word for it. Pick up a damn newspaper, right? I mean, the statistics are horrifying. And as my bobbleheaded partner has said so many times, and just intelligently, don't believe the numbers, because they're not even close. You understand that if somebody goes in and overdoses and spends 3 months on a respirator before they pull the plug, it's not even going to make it into the statistics. There are so many ways that they're working these statistics to make them not sound as bad as they are. A guy nods out at the wheel, right, and runs into a bridge abutment. That's not a drug overdose. You're damn right it is, right? But it's never going to make it in there. There are so many different ways that this is killing people, but we're not hearing about it.
Yeah, and that's what they do. That's what they.
It's exactly what they do.
It's intentional, guys, on a lot of levels from a lot of different places. Okay, and I'm not going to go down that road because it gets political real fast. But we all know. We all know it. I don't even have to say it. And that's the thing is that the only way that ever gets better is we have to. And it's like every other problem in our society. It starts in the home. It can't start outside of it. All right, you fix your family, you fix the world. I promise you. That's the God's honest truth. Now,
That's how you win. That's how you win the war on drugs.
And that's why Tommy's telling you right now. Talk to your kids.
One kid at a time.
Who cares?
Heather.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Did you see the comment from Heather and from DT? Heather says, "Yes, I raised 2 drug-free kids." DT68 says, "1 drug-free daughter." Let me tell you something, people. I remember going and talking at a school, And before I went on stage, I'm walking through the parking lot and I saw a Datsun B210. I don't know if you remember that car. You got to be old as hell to remember that car. But it was just at the time that car was released, it was about $3,000. By the time I saw this car, it was at least 15 to 20 years old, right? You could read a newspaper through the rust holes in this car, right? But they drove down there. I also saw a Mercedes Benz and a Ferrari 308. And when I got on stage, I said, you know what? First of all, thank you for being here because this isn't going to be fun. Even if everything I tell you right now is important, this isn't fun, right? You'd rather be home watching, I Love Lucy and eating a 5-pound bag of Oreos, and who can blame you? But whether you drove down here in a Ferrari or you drove down here in a Datsun B210 that has 300,000 miles on it that you can read a newspaper through the door, guess what? Doesn't matter. Because when they close the box on you, the only thing that matters is what you did for the people that are still here. There's nothing more important than what you're doing for the next generation. So to Heather and to DT68, my hat is off to you.
Yes.
Right? For real, because what you have just done is more important than Elon Musk getting a rocket to Mars. You understand? True story.
And it's just as important for people to say that too. Okay? When you succeed, when you have a good story, it's important to let other parents and other people know that that's how it ended up for you. Okay?
Right?
And then you got a door open there, right there. You could step right in and say, "Hey, this is what I did." You might not do it exactly, but here's kind of an outline. Maybe you should try that.
Right? Yeah, and you know what? If you're uncomfortable, send them here.
Yeah.
Just say, I saw a good video on this, and Heather says, "Thank you so much." No, thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, there's nothing on this planet more important than what you did. Nothing. I don't care how much money you make. I mean, honestly, when they close the casket, who cares? Creative Renewal says, my daughter is 13 and I've been telling her about my addiction since she was born. Good for you.
Yes.
I did the same thing.
Me too.
I did the same thing.
Let me share a story here, guys, and it might help put some perspective because this is just me personally. This is my story, kind of. You get a little, I don't know, you don't want to admit that you went down the road we went down or whatever. But even before I had that, I had the suicide thing that was going on. And both times, especially with my addiction, they asked me, "Do you want your kids to come see you?" Absolutely. And they would get in there and they would, you get your little family visit or whatever. And I said, "Hey, listen, I don't want my kids doing this. Can I walk them back here to where I'm actually supposed to be sitting here and looking at things?" They let me take my kids back there. And I'm telling you what, that scared the crap out of them. And
got real quick.
It got real, yes, because it just so happened that we walked by somebody's door, and you try not to look, but you can't help but look when there's noise and stuff. So my kids kind of look. They're trying to take everything in anyway. So they turned and looked, and there was somebody in some severe DJs. I mean, just shaking, sweating. We heard a couple people vomiting down the hall. And I looked at them. I said, "Listen, guys," I said, "that would have been me. I said, that's why I don't want it to be you." And I looked across the table at it. It's hard. It's hard to look at your kids and say, "Hey, I'm a drug addict. I need help. But I'm taking you with me so you don't make the same mistakes." And that's
huge.
It's exactly what I did. And it wasn't like a scared straight type of tactic. It was more like, "Hey, this is
my life."
Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly.
And I have no intention of lying to you about it.
And that, it goes right back to that whole honesty is where it starts.
No question.
And
lying to your kid is a death sentence for the relationship and very often for their life. Creative Renewal says, really, lifeboat, there's no benefit in hiding it. Do you know how huge, honestly, that statement is? Because I'll tell you something. There are parents who believe that there is. I've talked to so many parents that said to me, well, the last thing in the world I want to do is let my kids know that I ever did drugs, because when I tell them not to do it, they look at me and go, well, you did it, right? No, I want to tell you something. It starts right there. The reason I'm telling you not to do this is because I did this, right? I destroyed my life. Thank God, literally, that I was able to make something of my life later. But I urinated away 45 years of my life, and my daughter, God bless her, my daughter is just great. But, my business is doing really well. And she was out here seeing it. And, we're shipping stuff out and everything is going good. And before she left, I was dropping her off at the airport and she said, I'm so proud of you. I said, thank you. So I'm really enjoying it too. She said, not for that, but the fact that you were as bad off as you were and you got sober, she said, and this is the world we live in, but she said, my mom told me you were never going to get sober, that there was no hope for some people and you were one of them. But something, I'm not upset at her mom for saying that.
Right. No,
I really am not,
it's-
because
yeah.
my daughter has a very serious respect, for what this stuff can do to people, because it's real. It's not something that we tell them about carfentanil touching their fingers and killing everybody around. Your kid's not going to come across that stuff. Honesty. Yeah, I was addicted to drugs. So was your mother. Genetically, do you know what that means? That means that the first time you try it, the odds are so stacked against you being able to stop. It's incredible.
Yep. And that sucks for our kids, right, Tommy? But it's the
It
truth.
does.
It's the truth. That's what it has to
Knowledge
be.
is power.
Just forget about why it sucks. Deal with to not make it suck. I mean, that's really what you have to do. And I showed my kids so many times before I got help the quote unquote good things about taking drugs. When I went to rehab, I wanted them to see where that took me. And that's exactly what I did. And I'm telling you guys, it works. Both of my kids, my one son has just he worked at a place at a factory I worked at for 20 years. He gets promoted to a very good position within a year. My other son's held his job for almost 6 years and is a supervisor. My daughter, she's getting straight A's right now. You think that would have been happening if I'd have hid that crap from them? It wouldn't. I'm sorry, guys. It just wouldn't. Because I would have been fake. It would have been fake for me. And they needed to see it. They needed to see, hey, Dad was doing all that bad stuff, but guess what? This is better. I mean, and I'm not laughing at the whole situation. It's just, it's one of those
No, I know what
things.
you're
It's
saying.
like,
Absolutely. I mean, I have two children. The older of the two has experimented, and fairly extensively. I mean, nothing like I did, but he's tried a handful of drugs, at least a handful of drugs, and 4 or 5 of them. But there is not a drug that he has tried that he didn't talk to me about. You know what, Dad? I tried this. Never lied to me, like almost to the point where I kind of wish he would. I'm not even being funny.
yeah.
Like he's gotten to an age now where, you know what? I don't worry about him. His decision-making process, I'd love to see him maybe work a little harder. I'd love to. There's a lot of things, but as far as the drug things go, I don't have a lot of fear. But he'll say to me, there's drugs he hasn't done, right? He's never going to put an opiate in his mouth. He's not going to take a painkiller because he knows in his heart of hearts that the first time he does, it's all over, right? Mom and Dad we are a genetic time bomb when it comes to opiates. And, there's so much knowledge and power. I want you to think about it in another way, people, because I know that for a lot of people, it's a stumbling block to tell your kids that you did drugs. It really is a tough thing. Lewis Sparks said it was the most difficult thing in the world for me to admit that to. And I get that. I'm taking nothing away from you for it because it makes so much sense. It's one of the hardest things in the world. But this is how I want you to think about it, people. If there is a predisposition in your family to diabetes, if you are the 9th generation in a row to have diabetes, and you see your kid pounding 6 Coca-Colas a day, right, and living a lifestyle that all but guarantees that they're going to get diabetes, you're going to go, hey, let me explain something to you, right? You would never not do that. I mean, how awful a person would you be to not say, hey, you know what? You got to be very careful because you have this predisposition. Well, there's no difference at all. What we have is a disease, and your kid needs to know that they already have it, or very likely already have it.
Yeah. And I think that some of that is, it's sometimes it's not even just genetics, it's environmental. Because, you're there and they're in that with you. They're living where you're living. So if you're bringing that around them and they're seeing it, that's an environmental risk for them, right? And so they
Absolutely.
start thinking a different way. It doesn't have to be genetic, but a lot of it is. Like Tommy's saying, there is 100% true in my opinion. But there is also environmental things there that happen, and that's why when you see something in your environment that your kids are doing that seems weird, you go figure it out.
Yeah.
You are not their friend. You're their parents first.
Yeah.
That's what you
Absolutely.
have to be. That it has to be that way. You can be their parent, and then you can be their friend. And that's really how it has to be. Now I can tell you. Let me tell you this. This is why I know it works. My son is 26 years old. He called me 2 months ago to come pick him up at a friend's house because he knew he drank too much.
Awesome.
Do you think?
Awesome.
Do you think he would have done that if he was afraid to tell me something?
Awesome.
Because I don't ask him questions. I tell him, listen, if you're somewhere and that happens to you, because I get it, you're over there, you're having fun, whatever. I wasn't even judging. No judgment there at all. Because he's not an alcoholic or anything like that. He was having a good time with his friends, and he went a little too far.
Yeah.
So he calls
Sure.
me 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
He says, hey, can you come get me? Where you at? I didn't even ask you no questions. Where you at? He gets in the car, literally, maybe 3 words all the way back to the house. And I say, hey, I need you to come back to my house because I don't want you laying down in that bed and vomiting and doing something stupid.
Amen.
And so he's okay with that. So yeah.
Well done.
But yeah.
Well done. And I'm so glad you brought this up because honestly, I am so remiss for not having this conversation. Really. I mean, I'm so glad you brought this up. One thing, just real quick, Creative Renewal says, that's amazing. You feel like you're not scared. Amazing. I hope my daughter gets older. I'm more confident. You know something? You will be. Honestly. My son, admittedly, my son's almost 30, but I just know, he's been so open and so honest. I worry about a lot of other stuff in his life. I mean, that's just being a parent. But no, I don't worry about the drug aspect of it because I just know that yes, I was never my kid's friend, and that's probably a really good thing. But I used to say to my kid, my son and my daughter, the exact same thing. If you find yourself at a party and you've had too much to drink, or the person you're with, the driver, has had something to drink, you have a get out of jail free pass with dad for your entire life. I'm never going to yell at you.
Yep.
I'm never going to give you crap. We might talk about it the following day, but the most important thing in the world is that you don't get in that car.
Right.
You call me. And I remember my son calling me, and I was in a different state. For real. I called the cab company and said, I got a credit card and I need you to go get my kid.
Heck yeah.
Told them the whole story. They said, yeah, no problem. And you know what they said to me? I swear to you, happens all the time. Like they weren't at all, this was nothing new. They said, no, this happens all the time.
That's inspiring.
I thought
really.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
I thought it was absolutely awesome. And you know something? We talk to our kids all the time. Don't ever get in a car, drunk. Don't ever do that. It's not worth the risk.
Yep.
Well, I'll tell you what. They're more likely to die from an overdose than they are a car wreck, drunk driving or otherwise.
Yep.
Right? Plain and simple.
Yep.
But these are the conversations that you have to have. A little over 2.5 weeks ago, I went and I saw a girl with every single thing going for her in the world. Right? She was a newscaster, beautiful girl, young, and she's going to prison for the next 5 years of her life for one night that she got behind the wheel of a car. And she made an effort not to. But you got to make them understand that making an effort ain't good enough, right? You have to not get behind the wheel. You call Uber and it doesn't work. Okay. Sleep in your damn car,
Yep.
right? Do whatever needs to happen because you never get behind the wheel. All of these things need to be drilled into your kids. And if it sounds like everything I'm telling you is so painfully obvious, awesome. God bless you because you're way ahead of the curve.
Yes.
I promise you. If everything I'm saying you're saying, well, I've been telling my kids this my whole life. Well, then you're raising a drug-free kid.
Yep.
You're doing everything right. But if you're not, you better get on it.
And let me tell you guys this too. Listen, when you go get them in a situation like that, you don't have to say nothing to them. You don't, because they already know, or they never would have called you.
Amen.
So you don't have to rake them over the coals on anything. Matter of fact, you might want to do the opposite. Thank you for calling me. I mean, and that's kind of what I'm saying, because don't get me wrong. If it's an excessive thing, yes, don't get on about it, but address it afterwards or whatever. But if it's a once in a while type of situation, just pick your battles, man. Make it worth
Yeah,
it.
just go get them. Here's the other thing. Just like in the beginning, you better never hang out with Mark again. If you go and pick them up and you just scream at them the entire ride home, you know what you're telling them? Don't call me
I ain't
next
calling
time.
again. Yep.
I can't handle this. Next time you figure it out and get home without me, because I obviously can't handle this. You know, you go there and you say to them, boy, how much did you have to drink? You know, well, I was doing shots. I had 15 or 20 of them. Let me tell you something. You're going to have a rugged morning tomorrow morning,
Yes.
right? You're going to have a rugged morning tomorrow morning. I love you, man. Did you learn anything tonight? You don't have to be a jerk. There's so much that you can get across without acting like you can't handle being a parent.
You have to be a passive aggressive parent in that position.
Christine Stones has a great comment. I love this. She said, I am so grateful my son stayed away from drugs and alcohol. They were traumatized by seeing their dad drunk and how he ruined his life. People, you understand the importance of that comment, right? If your husband isn't an alcoholic, if your husband isn't someone on drugs, if my parents, I never saw any of that. I wasn't traumatized by any of those things. If you're raising a child and nobody in your family is the anti-role model, well, then get online and show them some.
Oh, yep.
Because they can learn from mistakes that don't traumatize them. Show them the videos that Mark has brought onto this channel, right? Show them Kensington and say, this is the crap that they're bringing in. This is what you could now you're not making anything up. You're not trying to make this seem worse than it is. This is reality.
Yep.
Right?
100%.
This is reality. And these are people with unbelievable tolerances. These are people who are doing this drug every day and they're bent over at the waist, unable to move. Do you know what that would do to you? It would stop your heart like that. That's why this year in this country, 150,000 people are going to die this way. And I just don't want one of them to be you.
Let me tell you this,
Right?
guys. If you don't talk to your kids, that's what ends up in the backseat of your car.
Yeah.
I promise you. That's a fact.
Hey, Hunt, we love you too, brother. Thank you so much for stopping by. I got to tell you real quick, M. Hunt, before you leave. So last night I was doing some research and some deep dive, and I went back and I watched the video from last season, and I was doing the state of the boat, and I pulled out the participation trophy to give to M. Hunt, and it was amazing to watch the video again because I was literally choked up, and so were you because you said, you know what, I got tears in my eyes, Captain. Where you're at today, man, I'm so proud of you, Hunt. It's hard to wrap my brain around. It really is. If you ever want to go back and watch it. I think it was the 7-month birthday. Go back and watch it because it's just you've come a long way, man. You really have. Stay the course. Proud of you, bud. Really proud of you.
It'll help build your confidence, man.
It will. Absolutely will.
Promise you, man. I'm proud of you too. I know everybody
full of hope.
Proud of you too.
Full of Hope says, but kids have friends that don't like getting high with a sober kid. Drinks get spoiled by your mates. Spike. You know what? Spike. There's really something to be said for the fact that your kid can be a force for good. They really can. But they have to have a base. They have to be so secure in everything that you taught them that they're just smacking down stupidity. Do you understand what I mean by that? Like when their friend goes, you know what? I completely controlled my drinking. Not sure I understand the comment, but I'm just glad that you're here, bud. I'm glad that you're doing.
He was like a functional.
Oh yeah, well, I'm glad that you're here, and I'm glad that you're on course, bro. I really am. Yep. If your kid is really got a solid knowledge base, if you've done the perfect job, when their best friend says, you know what, I bought 4 pills, they're gonna go, what are you kidding? Seriously, do you have any idea what you're doing? Because if the kid bought 4 pills that he thinks are perk 30s, then his parents or her parents didn't have that conversation. And unfortunately, people, your kid is going to learn about drugs. There's no 2 ways about it. They're either going to learn about it from their friends or they're going to learn about it from you. And the worst thing that you can do is trust the school to handle it. I promise you. I want you to be really logical. And if you can, think back to when you were a kid, because there were 2 people in high school that I didn't want to hear anything from growing up, right? I don't want to hear anything from a teacher about how to live. I didn't. And I didn't want to hear anything from a cop. Those were 2 very serious things for me. Like they were not people that I mean, I respected cops, but I didn't want to be in the same room with them. I really didn't. Like, I was already to that point. And when they started to do drug education, there were two people that taught it.
Yep.
Cops and teachers.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
It needs to be taught. It needs to be taught by
It
families.
has to come.
Bottom
It has
line.
to be in the home. Has to. Yeah, and Heather makes a great comment here too, because I agree with what she's saying. Says my parents didn't raise me the way I needed to be raised, so I decided I would raise them differently. See, guys,
Do you know what?
that's somebody taking
Yep.
a bad thing and flipping the script on it and learning from it. That's exactly what happens there.
I believe it was DT9 that said something earlier too, where he said it could be generational. My father was a severe alcoholic, and I drank enough to float a battleship, but the curse stopped with me. Do you hear that?
That's awesome.
You can break that chain, people. Yeah, DT, you're a hero, bub.
Yeah.
I swear to you, a hero. That is as good as it gets, man. You're an absolute hero. And to Heather and to everybody else who is out there raising drug-free kids and talking to your kids about drugs, nothing you're going to do on this planet, nothing is better than that.
That's right.
I mean it. I don't care if you find the cure for a disease. To affect the life of the next generation and keep them from becoming us, nothing that you're going to do is going to be more important than that. So,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
True story. Great stuff.
What if your child's supposed to be something that's really big for the world and you didn't do what you were supposed to do and they ended up doing what we did? You know what I mean? That's just one of those things you sit back and you think about. But let me tell you something. Every one of you guys in here are getting it. I mean, you guys really are. I love it. I love it.
People, please do me a favor. So tomorrow night is our Friday here on the Lifeboat. Go back at some point over the 2 days that we're off and read the comment section on this channel for this particular live feed, because you guys are on fire. There's not one of you that couldn't have sat in this chair or in that chair and done this.
Yep.
For real. And that says so much about all of you. If you think that the knowledge base that you're walking around with and the logic that you're applying to this situation is across the world, then you don't know anything about the statistics and you don't know anything about what's going on. You people are so far in front of the curve, it blows my mind. God bless every one of you, man. Keep doing what you're doing. This is really, really huge impact on me tonight, says Tommy Bird. I'll tell you something. You guys have an impact on us every night, but this has been really a special lifeboat.
It really has.
And you know what? Our hats off to you guys. You picked the topic tonight. You picked it last night. You keep sending the stuff in like this. And this is just going to be a hell of a season. You know, there's no reason why we can't do this forever.
Check your community post, guys, on this channel. I'll post it again tonight. If you guys want a topic, throw it down in there, and we'll see what we can do.
Yep.
That's, we've talked about a lot of things here, and I know that we're going to start doing repeats and stuff. So if there's something you want us to touch on, we definitely will do it. So,
no question. We will absolutely do it. Thank you to everybody that hit the like button. Thank you to everybody that's sharing this. The boat's getting bigger. The growth curve it's beautiful. They're coming in at a rate where everybody assimilates. If we got 4,000 people in a month, it might be scary as hell to continue the boat, because the relationships that we build here are just absolutely incredible.
Chaplain
J Trips. By the way, everybody, that's a reference to a cat.
Mm-hmm.
Just wanted you to know that. It's not a drug reference. It's actually a reference to a cat, but I've been doing a lot of corresponding back and forth with him. Great guy, absolutely a great guy. And we're really glad that you're here. All right, everybody, that is the top of the hour. And you know what that means? That means two things. Number one, it's the end of the show. And number two, I'm Captain Tommy Scovel, and on the other side of the glass,
Mark Wages.
And the second thing it means is a cat in a basket. Squirrel, look at the camera. Cooperate. All right. Good night, everybody. We love you.